There are many who are taking heart from the resistance that's coming in from Panjshir led by you. Thank you for speaking to us, Mr. Saleh. Back to you.
Thanks for that, Anand. Before I take this conversation forward, I would just want to bring in my guests as well. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at ORF, and also Ashok Sajjanar, former diplomat, is here. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. But Anand, the big news points from those interviews. Of course, he's spoken about Pakistan. He's spoken about United States misjudgment. The big news points?
Well, the big news points stand out where he's solely, squarely blaming Pakistan for what has happened. There is no doubt that the Taliban, which started as a pipeline police, were nurtured by Pakistan, and even now they continue to be patronized by the Pakistanis. But more importantly, with the US decision from Trump through into the Biden administration, one thing somewhere he's indirectly hinted at is that perhaps they knew exactly what Pakistan was up to, but they just played into the hands of the Pakistanis at this time. He's blamed the Pakistanis and the US squarely. He's also said that the Afghan people and the Afghan political establishment also lacked a certain level of political will, but there is resistance that he's going to mount, and he is not going to go join hands and combine forces with this group who he does not recognize. He and Ahmad Massoud have come out and said, Ahmad Massoud is Ahmad Shah Massoud's son. They have come out and said they will fight till the time they have wiped out the Taliban and they have restored the dignity of Afghanistan. And perhaps that's where it all stands, that this game was played with the US knowing exactly what Pakistan was doing, Arunima.
Ashokji, the fact that Amrullah Saleh is speaking with so much of confidence, he says the situation in Panjshir is under control. In the larger scheme of things, as far as resistance is concerned, how do you interpret his body language, the confidence that he's showing?
Arunima, first of all, congratulations to CNN, congratulations to Anand for conducting this absolutely superb, outstanding interview with Amrullah Saleh. Because we've been hearing about Amrullah Saleh, that he's around, what are the statements that he has made. But I think this is the first authentic that is coming directly from his mouth. So it is extremely reassuring. And this brings me to your question. His body language, as you mentioned, the choice of words, it is extremely reassuring, because I don't think anyone should be mistaken that although Ahmad Massoud and Amrullah Saleh are there in Panjshir and they are surrounded, there's a very inhospitable terrain. It has never been taken by the Taliban earlier. It has never been occupied by the Soviets in the 1980s when they were there. But still, they have huge challenges because, they are surrounded on all sides by Afghanistan and by Taliban. So Taliban has mounted this offensive against Ahmad Massoud and the Panjshir fighters. As far as their supplies are concerned, their fuel condition is concerned, that could be a challenge in the coming days. But as of now, it appears that as Amrullah Saleh said, and borrowing his words, they are on top of the situation. And I would hope that, the resistance that Amrullah Saleh has shown and the sort of messaging that is coming out of Panjshir, that would give rise to other areas of resistance around Afghanistan. Because, what Taliban had said is, we give you 4 hours notice. I think it is much more than 44 hours. And still they are nowhere achieving that objective. And I think if the Taliban is, gets a bloody nose here and is, totally snubbed by the Panjshir, then I think it is going to be a huge dent to its, image of invincibility that it has been able to create over the last, 2-3 months, that all the places, all provinces have fallen, like 9 pins when the Taliban has moved in. And maybe it is not only because of their fighting prowess, but because of many other means that they have employed to co-opt the people in those provinces.
Well, Ambassador Sajjanar, I take your compliments with all humility, but I have to stress and say this, that this interview would not have been possible had it not been for the efforts of our investigations editor, Manoj Gupta. So he also deserves credit along with the rest of us here at the network. Arunima.
Yes, Anand and Manoj, congratulations once again. Like everybody on the panel also agrees the fact that we have heard Amrullah Saleh so far, but now we are getting him to answer our questions and really get a sense of what he means when he talks about resistance. Sushant Sareen, when you heard Amrullah Saleh take those questions, does it seem to you that his assessment of the resistance is real, that Taliban could actually face a real challenge from Amrullah Saleh and the resistance there?
Look, I think he's certainly putting up a very confident face. I don't think I didn't see any kind of panic or any kind of readiness to compromise on what you might call the first principles. So to that extent, he seemed extremely confident. But I think I agree with what Ambassador Sajjanar is saying, that it's a tough road ahead. It's a tough road ahead because while they might be secure or might be able to, fend off Taliban offensives inside the Panjshir Valley, because it's a mountainous redoubt and it's a very difficult terrain, and these guys are natural to that area. But you have to take into account where will the supply lines run from. Eventually, if the Taliban keep pushing, then the supplies will run short. And unlike the past, there is nobody from outside helping these guys. When they were fighting the Soviets, the Pakistanis and the Americans were helping them. When they were fighting the Taliban, India, Iran, and Russia were helping them. But there is nobody, and there are no supply routes to them right now. So that is one problem. But what struck me really about the interview, and I wish Anand had more time and he had pressed on that issue. When Anand asked him about what was happening in Afghanistan, and Amrullah Saleh says that a money launderer who has been involved in terror finance is now the central bank governor. I think this should set off alarm bells all over the world. How do you recognize a government in which a money launderer is a central bank governor, and tomorrow, for all you know, a narcotics trafficker becomes the pharmaceuticals minister, a smuggler becomes the trade minister? This is a horror show of the worst kind. So clearly, I think this should serve as a wake-up call for any of those countries, especially in the West, who might be flirting with the idea of recognizing these guys. For me, the second takeaway was Amrullah Saleh's clarity on the role that Pakistan played, and the sheer, I don't know, what do you call it, obtuseness of the American policymakers, these high-flying Ivy League educated characters who, having made the mistake over the last 20 years of constantly funneling money to Pakistan and to people in Afghanistan, who never changed their behavior and never changed their calculus. And as Amrullah Saleh says, the more money you gave them, the more emboldened they became to continue on the path they were. And even today, after this debacle, the American policymakers and their advisors are still saying we need to stay engaged with Pakistan. We need to keep funding them. We need to keep financing these guys. And the familiar trope that, otherwise there'll be a humanitarian crisis. Now, clearly, it shows you a level of unreal policy making, which is why the West is in such a steep decline. There is no other reason. The West has everything going for it. The leverages which they have, they don't want to use. The leverages which they had are already gone. Where does that leave them? And I think this is what comes out very, very starkly from whatever Amrullah Saleh told Anand.
Anand, final word to you then. When you spoke to Amrullah Saleh, during that conversation, we heard what he had to say. But did you get, any key insight into his plan ahead? We're talking about resistance. We're talking about, how he's not succumbing. But does he have a clear plan?
Well, they've done this in the past. So they have the lessons of the past to take, because in the 90s again the same thing happened, and this is where the resistance was there and Taliban could never take control. What stands out this time is that this resistance and the ripples of this resistance were witnessed on the 19th of August when people took out the Afghanistan flag. They were berating the US, they were berating Pakistan, but they were also perhaps sending a message to the Taliban: don't replace this flag. This is the flag that we love, and this is the flag that Afghanistan stands for, and this needs to be respected. And perhaps that is something which Amrullah Saleh is also taking a lot of heart from and belief from. And there are those who are grouping around him. There are those from, and somewhere the support will come into him. Even if the Taliban are claiming that they have surrounded it from all sides, it's a narrow valley. It's not going to be easy for them to do it. They couldn't do it back then. How are they going to do it now without overtly then transgressing from that path of saying amnesty, collective will of the Afghan people? It's going to be a collective leadership. They actually want a Rahbari Council with 12 people, including Amrullah Saleh, or representation of the Tajiks, the Hazaras, the Uzbeks, along with the Pashtun, and of course some members of the Shura. So 7 are already there, 5 places are vacant. There is pressure on them to ensure that everybody is taken on board. And that is not going to happen because this man, along with Ahmad Masood and many others, are not going to give in towards the Talibanization of Afghanistan. That's what he said.
Right. Anand Narasimhan, thanks so much for joining us. Congratulations to you and Manoj Gupta once again for getting us that exclusive conversation with Amrullah Saleh. Thanks also to our guests, Ashok Sanjanhar, as well as Sushant Sareen, for discussing what Amrullah Saleh's statement means really for the resistance in Afghanistan.